first, I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for attending from wherever you may be. I know some of you it's morning, evening, afternoon, night, but we greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to attend. As Sean said, my name is Jeff Bonkowski. I was a career firefighter, currently retired. I trained to the level of a hazmat specialist. I was a paramedic and a tox medic and ran some hazmat teams within the state of Michigan. And I've got like over 30 years of experience. And after retiring, I started doing consulting work with ethanol industry, which was one of the high hazards and was becoming the #1 commodity shipped by rail. And in the process of looking for a solution for those high hazard fires or those types of fires, it led me to hazard control technologies and what I'm going to talk to you about today, encapsulator agent. And again, all the different uses and the different classes of fire. So I hope that this is informative and gives you some insight and how it can be very beneficial in using as we discuss and talk about our auto accidents and things along the highways. So to get started, it's Hazard Controls Technology's mission to, as we say, encapsulate the world. We want to make it a safer place. So through fire prevention, protection, specialized suppression, and the use of our eco-friendly innovative encapsulator technology, we hope that we can sit there and we can provide that extra protection that service we're looking for. And again, when I was doing my consulting work, my goal is the same as HCT's, trying to make firefighting a safer profession. We are a global company based out of Fayetteville, Georgia. We've been in business since 1997. And like I say, we've got distribution throughout the world. So the objectives today is hopefully getting you to have a better understanding of an encapsulator agent, how it improves the efficiency of water, adds safety, especially when we're dealing with some of our roadside accidents and some of the calls that we get called to. And we're going to be talking about a spherical micelle, and I hope to give you a better understanding and a definition of just exactly what that spherical micelle is. And we'll talk about the F500 encapsulator technology and how it interacts with all 4 legs of the fire tetrahedron, which can be especially important when we're dealing with our auto accidents because we have multi-classes of fires that we're dealing with, and identify the percentages. Because again, based on the classifier, we don't want you wasting the product so that it's not cost effective. So to start with, let's start to talk about what is an encapsulator agent. And right now, we, in all of our trade magazines and publications and things that we read about fluorinated ingredients in foam, the hazards being a carcinogen, a forever chemical. F500 has none of that. We've had the product tested to EPA 537 standard, which tested for 25 different fluorinated ingredients, and the results came back that we had 0 of the fluorinated ingredients tested for. It's a multi-class CUL US NFPA listed fire protection suppression agent, and then combustible, flammable, vapor, and liquid spill control. One of the things I like to point out, though, is when you sit there and when I'm doing my presentations, I like to ask the question when I show this slide is, can anybody in the fire service name for me another agent that can work and help take care of flammable vapors? Most cases I get some blank looks, but just something to think about. And we'll talk as we go through here about encapsulator agents and their abilities to work on vapors as well as the liquids. So when we get into the definition of the encapsulator agent, again, the basing building block is going to be that spherical micelle. We'll talk about those spherical micelles in depth as we go through the program. And to give you an understanding of it, we'll see a video, but right now the spherical micelles are capable of encapsulating carbon molecules, both polar and nonpolar, the hydrocarbon vapors, as well as the liquid molecules. So it's a very unique agent in being able to encapsulate many different properties that we deal with when we respond to our fires. So when we sit there, we look at it, when we talk about foams create that separation. Okay, well, an encapsulator, right, separates the fuel from the oxygen. We don't cause a blanket to cause a separation. We're actually working on a chemical molecular level, so totally different in how we react. And to give you a better understanding, let's start with a video that shows you
encapsulator technology, the next generation.
I'm going to stop that for a minute because for some reason I'm getting some interference. I'm not sure from where. There we go.
Encapsulator technology, the next generation of fire and hazard mitigation. First, we start with a simplified version of a single encapsulator agent molecule consisting of a hydrophilic polar head which loves water, dissolves in water, and a hydrophobic nonpolar tail which fears water and will do anything to get away from water. Once the E8 molecules enter the water, they instantaneously and automatically orient with the nonpolar tails inward and the polar heads outward, forming millions of spherical micelles. Micelles travel towards and exit the nozzles, forming E8 droplets. Micelles nearest to the surface of each droplet automatically break apart. The nonpolar tails orient outside the droplet, with polar heads on the surface, forming an EA skin on the surface of every droplet. In addition to the EA skin, there are millions of molecular spherical micelles within each droplet.
So as you can see, when we are introduced into the water stream, we're chemically changing the makeup of a water droplet. One, we're putting a skin on the surface, so it's no longer truly water that's coming in contact with many of the agents or many of the things that we're trying to extinguish. And yet there are still millions and millions of those spherical micelles inside of each and every droplet that are doing the encapsulation for us. So it's very important that you understand the how these work. So when we start looking at an encapsulator agent, as we go through this presentation, we're going to go back and think about our fire chemistry when we basically started into fire academy. We learned back when I was there, it was a triangle. Now it's a tetrahedron. But if you remove any one of the legs of the triangle, you've extinguished the fire. And we're going to show you how we're able to encapsulate the fuel, how we're able to eliminate, reduce the heat, how we're able to interfere with that chemical chain reaction where all the soot, the carcinogens, and the toxins are formed, and how we're able to improve air quality when we sit there and start using an encapsulator agent when we fight these fires. When we talk about our accidents today, the nature of the beast is changing daily. We're getting from gas-powered cars to hybrid vehicles to lithium-ion battery-powered vehicles, and it's constantly changing. So we're going to discuss and talk about, like I say, lithium-ion batteries, your Class D metals, your flammable liquids and fuels, and as they say, oh my, what else might be coming down the road. As we sit there, we start to look, and some of the statistics here in the United States alone, the number of deaths for the first 9 months of 2021, they have them estimated to be somewhere in the area about 33,000, 34,000 so far, just in the first 9 months. And the results are up 10% compared to 2020. But when we go back to 2019, it's up 17%. And some of the other things that we are learning is that our automakers, Ford, General Motors, and others, they're making pledges that they're going to increase the number of electric vehicles that they manufacture, hoping to have half of their fleet by 2030 all electric, and pretty much everything are eliminating gas vehicles by 2035. So there's going to be a major shift in the coming years in the number of these electric vehicles, these hybrid vehicles that we're going to be seeing on the roadways. And, as we keep hearing, the difficulties of extinguishing lithium-ion batteries in some of these batteries, and the technology is constantly changing. So when we sit there and start looking at our vehicles today, let's look at the classes of fires that we're dealing with. And, there's many of them. It's not just, a fuel fire and some class A, some plastic and things like that. We're dealing with multiple classes. Class A, your seats, your interior, your plastics, your class B, your class D. And then again, lithium-ion batteries, as I've mentioned. We look at the class A materials. Again, tires, the cloth seats, the toxins, the plastics, all things that, give off those carcinogens and those toxins that are causing our cancer rates in the fire service to be increased. And again, we're learning now with fluorinated foams and having the toxicity being exposed to some of those if we're using it on our vehicle fires. So when we look at class B materials, again, we have our auto accidents where we have fuel spills, oil, transmission fluid if the radiator's been damaged. But it's not only with cars, but we have to look at tanker trucks. I mean, a lot of us respond to accidents involving tractor trailers, and fuel tanks get ruptured. It doesn't necessarily have to be a tanker truck. A lot of our our semis today carry 150 to 300 gallons of fuel, which is quite a bit. And again, if we have to start working on extrication, what is your current method to make that scene safe if you're doing an extrication with fuel and oils and things on the ground? Our class D metals, in an effort to make vehicles lighter, but yet maintain the strength, auto manufacturers are relying more and more on parts that are lightweight and made out of magnesium or titanium or other high strength metals. I was doing some reading, and on an average vehicle, there's somewhere in the area of about 350 pounds of magnesium parts on a vehicle. It's not just in the steering column, but you're looking at some suspension parts, engine parts, dash parts, those center consoles in our vehicles. Many different pieces or parts to the vehicles are being made out of these lighter weight materials because they offer great strength, and again, in trying to make these vehicles lighter. If you look at some of our new Ford aluminum body F-150s, there's amazing amounts of magnesium as far as cross members, and I believe even the radiator support. But they're just a great number of parts that are made with magnesium, and they're constantly growing. I know some magnesium companies that used to make alloy parts that have now converted all to magnesium because the number of parts that they're going to be making out of magnesium is growing. So when we sit there and look, I want to show you this video. It's a car fire that involves magnesium. One of the things I want to point out is as he's going through, you can see they've added to the fire load. They've used a lot of times they'll put diesel fuel or some type of a fuel, an accelerant that they'll add to help get the fire started. But then they put some other things in there to increase the fire load. As you notice, as he's going through, he keeps adjusting his spray pattern. He's trying to do multiple things, cool the metal, extinguish the fire. And we'll see some other videos as we go through. Actually, we have a video with a car fire with thermal imaging that's really pretty impressive. As he comes around to this other side, this is a video I like to show for the simple reason as he sits there and he hits the steering column, you're going to see a brief flash. Okay, he's broken the crust on the surface. As that magnesium burns, it has a tendency to form a crust. When he hit it with the F500 spray, he broke that crust, exposed it to air, and he had a flash. As you notice, it wasn't an explosion. Nothing flew out of the car, nothing flew up in the air or towards him. It was just a, like I say, just a little bright flash, and the encapsulator agent was able to start cooling and extinguishing. One of the other things I point out is you see some magnesium yet on the floorboard. As he sits there and he fills up that floorboard with the F500 solution, even though it's becoming submerged in F500 solution, there's still no explosion. You might see it bubble, so you might see it as it's cooling, but there won't be an extinguishment, or there won't be a mag fire or explosion. And the reason why when we use water, we see those explosions with magnesium is because of the temperatures that magnesium burns at. Magnesium burns in excess of 4, 5, 6,000 degrees, and it causes water molecules to separate into their two properties, hydrogen and oxygen. And I ask the question, what did we used to send rockets to the moon with? So we're creating an explosive atmosphere, and the magnesium is still hot enough so we get those explosions. We got another video here. Again, a car fire. This is at a demo. First time they probably had an experience using encapsulator agent. And one of the things that you can see is, like I say, as he's going through making his extinguishment, he's doing a couple things. He's working to cool the metal. He's working to extinguish. If you watch black smoke turning white, we're encapsulating those soots and the toxins that are being released, reducing the carcinogens that would be exposed to normally. Again, magnesium you'll see on the steering column. So what he's doing now, it's a TKO nozzle, our turbo knockdown nozzle, which will have various percentages from a half, 1 to 3. Because of the mag, he's gone ahead and switched it up to 3%. One thing that we want to caution, and he did make the change, as you notice when he was first starting to hit that, he had it at a relatively straight stream. You want to caution when you are attacking to stay away from that straight stream pattern. You want to go in and rain it down and do a subtle to start getting some cooling of the magnesium before you get it. But like I say, the magnesium is able to be extinguished and cooled because we put that skin on the surface. If we think back to the video showing how when we introduce encapsulator agent in to the water stream, we're doing it. And as you can see on the floorboard there, you can see some of that bubbling taking place. I'm backing up here a little bit. You'll see that bubbling taking place because that magnesium has been submerged under the solution. Again, no explosion when that happens. So our next thing we're going to talk about in our fire classes is our lithium-ion batteries, our hybrid vehicles, our Teslas, and we have what Ford's coming out with an electric truck, and they've got a hybrid smaller vehicle, which is a Maverick, and General Motors and all the different auto companies are coming out with these. But we always, when we start talking about our lithium-ion vehicles, we all suddenly think of cars. But technology is also starting to include trucks and buses, not only buses that run up and down our streets, to pick up the passengers and get them to work. But right now, you have school bus manufacturers that are starting to manufacture school buses that will be running on lithium-ion batteries. So it's not just the auto manufacturers that are trying to get away from the gasoline engines. Okay, it's pretty much any vehicle that's going to be traveling our roads are one day going to end up being an electric vehicle. It's going to be growing exponentially over the next few years. This is
Into
a
the deadly crash involving one of Tesla's cars with an autopilot feature. The car slammed into a tree and burst into flames. Police tell ABC News it appears no one was in the driver's seat. Here's ABC's Gio Benitez.
Tonight, mystery surrounding a deadly crash near Houston involving a Tesla Model S. The charred wreckage captured on camera after it crashed into a tree and burst into flames. 2 men inside were killed. The Tesla's high-energy battery reigniting over and over again. Firefighters trying to put the fire out for 4 hours with more than 30,000 gallons of water. The fire eventually put itself out. Now tonight, the question, was the Tesla running on autopilot?
Okay, so 4 hours and 30,000 gallons of water. I mean, I read a lot of articles, and I'm sure some of you have out there as well, where the rule is use water, you'll need copious amounts. Well, I always kind of get leery when I hear copious amounts, because how much is a copious amount? And here we have an example. One vehicle, 30,000 gallons of water, 4 hours. Basically, the vehicle burned itself out. What they did is they had, and in reading and looking at this, they knocked the fire down rather rapidly initially. The problem was they weren't able to cool the batteries down and stop thermal runaway, so they had reignition. The other thing I want to point out is, if you sit there and you start looking at the makeup of a lithium-ion battery and all the hazards that they present, where did that 30,000 gallons of water run off to? How much did it contaminate? You say, so we have to look at all aspects of this, because again, people are becoming more and more conscious of the environment and what firefighters are doing, just like with the fluorinated foams. Okay, where we have to now be a little bit more cautious in how we use them and where we use them. We're going to have the same things with lithium-ion batteries as we look to the future, when people start to realize that, hey, this runoff is causing an environmental issue if it gets into the groundwater. Okay, we can't afford to continue to use 30,000 gallons of water. If you go out west where they're experiencing drought conditions, they don't have 30,000 gallons of water that they can afford to use on one car fire. Here's another example with the car fire. It's this particular vehicle took 35 firefighters and 5 trucks. One of the reasons why is because the water source. Okay, while I go to many fire departments and communities, and I get the old, oh, hey, we have fire hydrants, we have all the water we need, water's free. Well, how many of you have fire hydrants on the expressway, or if you're an area where you have some rural communities that you do mutual aid with? Again, you don't have the luxury of water. But again, this is a relatively long video showing the traffic backup. Okay, your exposure in some instances, if you're not able to block traffic 100% all the way, you're exposing firefighters to distracted drivers. And I know on an annual basis, there's many firefighters I read about on a yearly basis that are killed by distracted drivers. We're approaching here in the US, wintertime, where we're going to have icy road conditions, and again, auto accidents and things like that. And as we respond out there and we start using our water, again, 30,000 gallons of water on a day when it's 28 degrees Fahrenheit, what do you think that's going to do? We're going to be freezing up and creating a huge traffic situation if we're starting to use water in these cold conditions. So, like I say, these are new hazards that we're going to keep being faced with, and I want to try to, as we said at the very beginning, our goal is to make firefighting a safer profession, and keeping people off the road and away from these distracted drivers is a way to do it. So when we sit there and we start looking now and we talk about, NFPA, and some of the things that go on, the question comes up, how would your department approach a lithium-ion battery fire or a solar panel? Or how about a solar panel that charges lithium-ion batteries? There's many different situations that we can be dealing with. When we sit there, we start looking at our lithium-ion batteries, we see that, how easily they can fail. We see the amount of smoke that's being released. That's not just smoke. A lot of these lithium-ion batteries, the way they're made, because of the electrolytes that they use, the gas being released is HF gas, hydrofluoric gas, which can be deadly. It attacks calcium in your body. Here we have, a laptop that was just sitting there charging. Again, we have no idea if it was dropped or what type of abuse. It may not have had any abuse. But we can see just how violently these batteries can fail and create situations of house fires. And while, we're showing this sitting on a table, how about your cell phone sitting in your car on a hot day? Maybe, we left it, we were doing something, going to the beach, maybe swimming or whatnot. And instead of bringing the car or at the pool, and instead of bringing it, you leave your phone in the car sitting there, and maybe we forget to cover it and it overheats. It doesn't necessarily have to be a scooter or a laptop. It could be your cell phone in your car. So all different things we need to think about with these batteries. This video is going to show some comparative testing, because when we sit there and we currently look at the technology that we're familiar with, we know that it's a copious amount of water. But then if we look at all of our buildings, our warehouses, our schools, our stores, what's the extinguisher that's required for these occupancies? And they're usually an ABC, a powder. And as you can see, if we're dealing with a lithium-ion battery at, let's say, the hardware store, power tools, powders don't work. They might temporarily extinguish the fire, but they're not going to keep it out, because they're going to do nothing to be able to stop the thermal runaway. When you look in the middle, I'm going to back it up here just for a second here. We look in the middle of the foam. When they start applying the foam, it just seems to aggravate the fire. It really doesn't do much to be able to put it out. And then when you sit there and look at F500, he's using just short little bursts. He's not using a constant spray. He's using a short little burst. This video was done in conjunction with HCT Europe and Johnson Controls. It was done at Kiwa Labs in the Netherlands. And the results were that when they had got all done, this is right from Johnson Controls results. The powders were poor, and the remarks are, do not apply on lithium-ion batteries. When we looked at foam, they gave it moderate to poor. But again, in the remarks, not recommended for use on lithium-ion batteries. When we look at F500, they gave it sufficient and recommend it on lithium-ion batteries. In fact, over in Europe, they're even selling extinguishers with F500 in it, and have literature and brochures that state the only thing that can stop thermal runaway and extinguish a lithium-ion battery is F500. So it's a very versatile extinguishing agent. So when we sit there, we start looking at, our average responses. The results are, somewhere in the area about 1,200 or 12,200 roadway responses occur every day in the United States. and we don't know what materials are involved, or fuels. We have many different hazards that are running up and down our roadways, and we can sit there and with an encapsulator agent, we can help deal with so many of them, and increase the safety. The biggest thing is if we can get out there and we can start reducing the exposures to some of the toxics that are being released when these cars are burning, when the batteries are burning. If instead of having to use 30,000 gallons of water, we can use much less, possibly 1,000 gallons or less on a lithium ion, 100 gallons or less on a traditional car fire. Being able to encapsulate the HF gases being released, being able to encapsulate the toxins that are being released when we sit there and start looking at the fuels and the plastics in our normal cars. But not only that, if we're needing less water to extinguish these car fires, what do you think that's going to do for our time on the roadways? Okay, if we have a tractor trailer fire, and I've, had a department tell me that, hey, we had this fire and, we used 2,000 gallons of water on it and we weren't able to put it out. And we had our heavy rescue come because it had F500 on it. And with 300 gallons of water, we put it out. It's like, that's impressive. What 2,000 gallons of water couldn't extinguish, with 300 gallons of water with F500 in the solution, they were able to extinguish it. So again, much less water. If they had used that on right off the get-go, 300 gallons of water, they would have been packing up and they would have been back at the station before the heavy rescue even arrived. So some of the things that we need to think about with our injuries and our losses, firefighters. Again, I'm going to talk about, these icy conditions that we're going to be experiencing here shortly. But, we want to reduce and hopefully reduce our exposure to not only our seasoned firefighters, but our rookies. Because many times, when we have a car fire, hey, let's put the rookie on the line, let them get a little practice using the hose and get a little nozzle practice. If we're sitting there, if we're using foams, again, we're exposing ourselves to those forever chemicals. And when we sit there and we start looking at the encapsulator agent and how we're changing the chemical makeup of the water and how we have that effect in being able to reduce those toxins and all the things that we currently are exposing ourselves to that are causing cancer within the fire service, it's I guess you can say disheartening to know that here we have a product that can help keep firefighters safe. And, we have such a hard time trying to get it out there and get people to understand all the uses and the value of using it. So when we sit there, we start talking again, we don't need, when I showed that one video, 35 firefighters and 5 trucks, we're not going to need that number of personnel. So we can, again, by not needing as many people on a call, we're reducing the exposure. If we don't need all those trucks on scene, we're reducing the wear and the tear and the maintenance and the cost associated with having to maintain those vehicles because we don't need to run them as often. We're going to be using less water. Not only that, then we have less water runoff. We have less environmental impact that we have when we're sitting there and using our Class B foams currently. And then all of the fees that are associated with those cleanup costs. So when we sit there and we look at the unique features of an encapsulator agent and how it's able to render fuels and things non-flammable, not ignitable, we look at the NFPA standard, which an encapsulator agent falls under. And in section 7.7, you'll read the spherical micelle stability test. Very important test. It makes sure that those spherical micelles are working. That test is, we take a gallon of gasoline, we take 16 ounces of an encapsulator agent and 5 gallons of water. Once that's mixed into the solution, it's allowed to sit for 1 minute and a torch is passed across the surface of the pan. There can be no ignition. Then after 2 hours, after the initial test with the torch, it sits for 2 hours. And if it were foam, the foam blanket would break down, expose the fuel. And if you put a torch to it, it would ignite. With encapsulator agent, after 2 hours, because we've encapsulated the fuel, you can pass the torch across the top of this and the surface, and there will still be no ignition. And I will say that it will go much longer than the 2 hours. Again, we're going to go through here another little car fire. Some of the things that I want to point out, and I kind of mixed again, this is a good one to see that black smoke quickly turning white. You're going to watch as he's, going in, how quickly he's able to get that knocked down and extinguishment. But that black smoke turning white, those toxins, the interruption of those free radical coalescence that we talked about at the beginning, those free radicals. Okay, we're interfering with that process where those carcinogens are formed. When he's sitting there and he's going through, look how little water he's used. Look how little water is around the vehicle. Again, when we sit there and I talk about cold weather, what do you think that's going to do as far as being able to open up that highway and have traffic safely running down without having to, call for 5 or 6 trucks to bring salt because they've put 30,000 gallons or they put copious amounts of water down. So all things that we need to look at. But he sits there and they go through, they get done. As you can see, one of the points that I like to also bring out when people are using encapsulator agent is that when he's going through, you'll look, he's not constantly flowing water. I know when I was in many firefighters, they sit there and they get their nozzle. We got our rookies out there and they open up the nozzle and shoot, it's 5, 6, 7, 800 gallons of water before they shut the nozzle off. And when you sat there and you watch him, he's got a TKO nozzle, again, adjustable from a half, 1, 3%, 20 gallons per minute. And he is opening and closing the nozzle as he sits there and he knocks the fire down. Once all the fire's knocked down, he sits there and he goes and he shuts it off. As he swept across the roof, you notice he hit the sunroof, a little bit of magnesium. Now he's going to come down. He's going to sit there and he's going to hit it. He broke it up, and that's why you saw kind of flash away on him, but he broke the chunks up. But again, there was really no explosions shooting those flammable sparks way up into the air or burning up turnout gear. We look at a Class A material, just our regular wood pallets. We will sit there and we light them up. The pallets that are on the left side have been treated with F500. And this is a good example of some of the burn back resistance that is also going to be provided when you sit there and start using an encapsulator agent. So we get those lit up. We're going to sit there. I'm going to move ahead a little bit. I'm going to turn this up because we'll see. So we're getting up to about 1100 degrees. So as you can see, we've got temperatures in excess of 1100 degrees that are impinging on those pallets. So the amount of radiant heat, the amount of heat that those pallets, once they've had that treatment, an encapsulator agent, offers some really, really good burn back resistance. speed it up here a little bit.
What kind of temperatures we got? I only had 1100. I think I'm getting a 1300 now. Still around 1100 max.
No. So when he puts it out, I'm trying to speed it up because it's a long video, but as he goes ahead and he puts these out rather rapidly. Again, once we put it out, we do still have to do our overhaul. Our due diligence as firefighters, go through, make sure we've extinguished everything. We do our overhaul. But we've taken from 1100 degrees down to 122 degrees just in a matter of seconds, being able to encapsulate. Some of the other things that we're going to see is that rapid heat reduction. You know, even though you have what appears to be steam, which it is not, it is a warm white mist, but it is not steam. So we're able to, you know, place our hands on it. One of the other things when I do some of my demos and I get some of that heavy char and I've extinguished with F500, you can actually, you know, break off a piece of that wood with that heavy char and you actually have a totally different smell. It's a clean smell. It's not going to be that burnt wood, that charcoal, that charred smell. It's actually a clean smell. Because again, we've helped reduce those toxins and those carcinogens. And then we take a torch, we sit there and we start to show how we can put the torch back onto the areas that we've just had burn. And we can get it to glow. We can get it to glow cherry red. We can, you know, get it to burn slightly, but once we pull the torch away, it will self-extinguish. And then if we go over here to the other pallets that were pre-treated. Yep. Again, these were the ones that were pre-treated before. And same thing, while we can get them to start to burn, get cherry red, they'll start to burn. But once the torch is pulled away, the fires go out because of that burn back of resistance, the properties that encapsulator agent will bring and offer when it's supplied. So I'm going to go on to the next one. Here is going to be a jet fuel fire.
Hazard control technology.
One of the things I want to point out for those of you that are very familiar with foam, use foam, you know that there's only 3 application techniques. The 3 application techniques are you rain it down, bank it in, or roll it on. Now, here we have a pit, a fire that, because there's nothing in back, there's really only 2 methods. You can either try raining it down or rolling it on. And when we start to look at how much foam is it going to take? But yet with an encapsulator agent, you'll see he rapidly sweeps across, and in a matter of seconds, he's reduced or eliminated about 80%, 90% of that fire. And now he's working on doing a couple things. He's trying to cool the metal ring being an ignition source. And then he's working to extinguish the fire. So once he's had the fire out, he'll be able to take his glove off and go up and touch that metal ring. He's cooled it down below the auto ignition temperature. But the question I'm going to ask is, how many gallons of foam do you think it would have taken to extinguish the same fire? I mean, if you were raining it down, you're going to have to rain it down long enough until it can get a footprint in and start to, you know, cool off an area and start to spread. Or it's either you build it up in front of the pit and then you roll it on. But how much foam do you think it would have taken? You know, here we're using a 100 or 95 gallon per minute nozzle, 3% of F500, and they had that fire extinguished in a matter of seconds. And when we sit there, we start looking at some of the new fluorine-free or the non-fluorinated foams that are being introduced. The problem becomes is they need anywhere from 3 times or more amount of concentrate than you do with the current foams. So what does that do to your cost? The other thing I'm going to throw out there, when you sit there and you start looking at some of our new fluorinated foams, before you make a purchase, please look at the SDS. Because in many cases, and thanks to some states that require more stringent reporting of toxics and some chemicals, you're going to see that in some of these fluorinated, fluorine-free foams, they're getting rid of the PFOS and the PFOAs, but we're changing it out with things that are teratogens and mutagens, and you know, they cause birth defects or other health problems. So we're getting rid of one and exchanging for another. So we need to kind of figure out, you know, if that's the way we want to go. When we sit there and we start looking at an encapsulator agent, again, non-corrosive, non-toxic, basically able to be used on all fires that foams are not able to be used on. So it's a unique extinguishing agent because of all the things it's able to do with the rapid cooling, the reduction of the toxins, up by 98.6%. Your long-term burn back resistance, as we saw with those pallets. We don't work with creating a blanket because we're not a foam, and it's a multi-class extinguishing agent. So when we talk about that rapid cooling and how does it work? How is it able to do that rapid cooling without creating that scalding steam that we see? And the reason is because we change the mechanism of how a water droplet is able to cool. Where water turns into steam, okay, and can cause steam burns, okay, we put that skin on the surface of the water droplet that we saw earlier. And by putting that skin on the surface, what happens is it helps drive the heat interior to the water droplet. And those millions and millions of spherical micelles that are inside of each and every water droplet, they rapidly absorb the heat and then slowly release it into the water around them. And through that process, there is no steam created. Yeah, you see that mist, that warm white, but again, it is not steam. This is a video I mentioned earlier, showing the thermal imaging. It gives you a better idea and example. You'll start to see our temperatures in excess of that 1200 degrees, but watch how rapidly those temperatures drop. I mean, in a matter of seconds, he's taken it from 1200 degrees and you know, we've dropped it down considerably. So it gives you a really good idea with this visual thermal imaging, just how effective and how efficient an encapsulator agent in your water stream is when it comes to being able to extinguish and cool these metal surfaces. And when we look at it, your metal surfaces, especially if you're around flammable liquids or gases, can be an ignition source or a reignition source. So if we can sit there and in the process of putting a car fire out, we can sit there and we can actually be and have an effect on being able to cool and prevent those reignitions from occurring. So here we've taken a propane torch or a blow torch, a acetylene torch. We've heated up to 1200 degrees and with a little 2.5 gallon water extinguisher mixed with a 3%. They rapidly are able to cool that metal to a point where he's going to be able to touch it. He can put his hand on it. And that was just with a few seconds of application. Again, not something you'll do with just plain water. So when we sit there and we talk about what are the benefits, okay, well, again, if we've been able to rapidly cool, we need less water. Okay, we're going to have less damage, less time operating on the highway because we can turn that vehicle now over to the towing company much quicker, and we need less resources. You may not need that second, or you may not need that third pumper, or if you're out in a more rural area, you may not need that tender shuttling water to you. Again, all wear and tear on vehicles that you can hopefully reduce. So not only that, but if we're using less water, again, the environmental impact, that you're going to have, being able to do that, the need to possibly have, the highway department come down and have to do a major road cleanup. If there's fuels involved, what do you currently use to take care of your fuels and things like that when you're doing some of your extrications? We'll talk about that as we continue on. But the toxin reductions, I've mentioned all through the presentation, we're exposing ourselves to who knows what when we sit there and we start responding to our accidents on the highway. What's being released in some of the new vehicles as far as, the materials that they use to make the seats or the roof liners or other parts of the vehicle? When they burn, what kind of toxins are they releasing? So when we sit there and start looking at the ability of an encapsulator agent to interfere and to start absorbing and improving that air quality, we have instances where, F500 can reduce your cancer causing toxins and sit by up to 98.6%, which is huge. It makes a huge difference in providing that safety when we're looking at fighting fires. This video is again a pile of tires. We have some good heavy black smoke taking place. You'll see as he sits there and he goes through and he starts making an attack, the first thing he does is he sprays off to the side to make sure he's got the F500 solution in the stream. But now I stop here and I ask the question. I still see a lot of fire. Where's the smoke? Okay, that ability to start working and start encapsulating, interfering with that those free radicals, okay, those toxins. Okay, where's the smoke? And this is showing you the effectiveness of the encapsulator agent as he's fighting this fire. And once he's gotten to that point where he's starting to attack the fire and he's eliminated that black smoke, and again, you see that white mist coming off there, that's not steam. If you were to take your glove off and stick your hand into that mist, it'd be no hotter than a shower. So he's going through, as I mentioned earlier, just because you put the fire out, you still need to do your overhaul. So he's basically separated the tires out. He did a little bit more cooling. He did his overhaul. So when we sit there, we talk about, the percentages, those toxin reductions, and you may ask, hey, where did it come from? Well, it came from a Clemson University test where they tested F500 and they used an inverted glass funnel. And they were looking at three things. They were looking at light transmission through the smoke column. They were looking at the buildup of smoke or the buildup of soot on the sides and the walls of the funnel. And then they were looking at the toxicity of that soot. And they ran the test using water. And then they redid it, the second series of tests using a 3% solution of F500 encapsulator agent. And these are the results that came from that study. A 68% reduction in increase in visibility. So when you sit there and you start looking at, those car fires, that white smoke, that black smoke turning white, well, we're helping actually increase visibility because we're getting rid of and reducing the soot and the toxins. The soot was reduced by 97%, but the toxicity by 98.6%. And when we sit there and we start looking at some of the excerpts, You know, the excerpt one from it suggests that the interruption of the vapor phase combustion, possibly by inhibiting the radicalescence in the soot particles. So where those carcinogens are forming, where they join together, we're interfering with that. And then again, toluene, the fire extinguisher F500 produced smoke and combustion byproducts that were 98.6% less toxic than compounds released from untreated fires. And we're going to see as we go through and we talk a little bit more about even lithium-ion batteries and things like that, how encapsulator agent reduces the toxins from those types of fires as well. The testing that was done with benzene. These were done in looking at the exposure to firefighters and with their inhaled breath. And these were a test that was done by the NIOSH, excuse me, with Dr. Fent. And what they were doing is they were looking at, baseline readings, and they were looking at a civilian non-smoker, and they were looking at the median average. It was 0.8 parts per billion of benzene, and they looked at a person that smoked, and they were about 5 parts per billion. And then a firefighter, the average was 20 to 30 parts per billion. And then when he sat there and they put him into a exposed, exposure, they sat there and they watched how much higher the levels went. And we see that, we're at that pre-level at 20 to 30. The post levels went up close to 80. So if you look there in the middle, they're being exposed to a fire. And then 1 hour afterwards, they're back down in that 44 to 54 parts per billion. And that's our exposure when we sit there and we go into a regular house fire or some other types of fires that we might be exposed to. Even though we're fully clothed with our turnout gear, we have our hoods on, we're still absorbing these benzenes and these toxins through our skin. So if we're able to use an encapsulator agent in our water stream and reduce them before we become exposed to them, before we make our entries, it's going to greatly reduce the amount of toxins that we're going to be absorbing in our skin while we're fighting these types of fires. And if we're absorbing less because we're reducing them using an encapsulator agent, we're reducing our risk to cancers. We're improving our health, as well as we're improving the environment because we're not going to have as much runoff. The Clemson study showed the visibility and safety all around. And when it says safety all around, the point I want to point out here is, let's take this again and talk about that structure fire, that house fire. And I know this is supposed to be about, our auto accidents, but, if we take and we look at a structure fire where we're being exposed, normally we like to get into the structure and find the source or the spot of the fire, hit it, excuse me, because we don't want to interrupt those thermals, as we call them, because we'll change those thermals and cause that heat to come down and possibly burn some firefighters. Well, now we put an encapsulator agent in the stream, and we go in and we start as soon as we kick open the door, and we have all that black smoke pouring out the door. How about now we go in with a fog pattern, a tight fog pattern. We start spraying around the ceiling, knocking down that smoke, reducing those soot and the toxins. We start reducing those temperatures. What if there's a victim inside that structure? What do you think that's doing for him or her? If it's a child, what kind of conditions would it be if you waited and created the steam when you got to the seat of the fire versus encapsulating, reducing the soot and the toxins, improving your visibility, reducing the temperatures without creating steam? You're totally changing the conditions. So it's not only working on those car fires, also on our structure fires. But F500 is an eco-friendly. It is biodegradable, non-corrosive. There's no PFOS and PFOAs, which are the main thing that people are so worried about being exposed to right now. So it's a very useful multi-class extinguishing agent with no harmful chemicals. And this is just a real quick slide that shows, all the different areas and you know, the occupational cancers that firefighters are battling because of their exposure to the PFOS, or because of the, you know, the different types of toxins. I mean, our houses, you know, you look at 40 years ago, what a house was made out of versus today. And you know, you start looking at how much faster they're burning, and it's because of all of the new synthetic materials that are being used in the construction of our homes. So it's making things harder and harder for us as far as, you know, the cancers that we're being exposed to, the carcinogens we're being exposed to when we sit there and we try to go in and extinguish these fires. Some of the other benefits are, if we're not using as much water, you're going to have less soil contamination. We're not going to be staying into the environment. We're not one of those forever chemicals, so there's going to be no contamination of water. We're not going to be, you know, contaminating wildlife. And the cleanup costs, the savings. And I can give you some, you know, examples where, you know, the savings and the cleanup cost can be astronomical. And your community health. So we're going to talk here, you know, we've seen the Tko nozzle. Again, as I mentioned, it's a little 2-liter bottle. It's 20 gallons per minute. It's adjustable from a half, 1, and 3% at 100 PSI. It's a great tool when you're sitting there and you're dealing with maybe a brush fire, small little brush fire, or you're dealing with your car fires or some small fires, but there's very many uses for this nozzle. Again, here we have it. One of the things, again, I'm pointing out, black smoke turning white. You know, he's using all these different classes. He's got the fuel, he's got the magnesium, he's got the plastic, he's got the interior. But again, he's not constantly flowing water. He's going to, as you see him, as he starts coming around, he's going to have it shut off. So he flows the water, he knocks down the fire, he cools the steel a little bit, he comes back on this side, sprays a little bit, but look how little water he has on around the vehicle. Very, very, very little runoff as after he's extinguished this fire. So it shows the versatility of the agent and being able to rapidly cool, rapidly extinguish this fire using very little water. I mean, 20 gallons per minute. If you time that, he's probably only used, oh, wow, I would say maybe 30 gallons of water. Because I know he has, I don't even think that much, because I don't think he's flowed water for a full minute. So as he does his overhaul, I mean, we'll add that in there, but I mean, it just shows the ability of these encapsulator agents to knock down the fire using much less water and being much more effective. Another tool that most firefighters carry is a fire extinguisher. I carry 2 of these fire extinguishers in my vehicle as I travel. And, you know, if I were to come across a car fire, I feel pretty confident that with 5 gallons of water, I can do a pretty good knockdown. I might not be able to put out the magnesium, but I figure the class A materials that are in the car fire, or if it's an engine compartment or something that's just starting, I feel pretty confident that with 5 gallons of water, I could put a fire out. And again, as you use the product, you become familiar with the product and how to apply, you will have the same results. The knockdown power is just absolutely amazing. And one of the things that we've come up with, started to put on those, is a European water mist hose, which gives a nice sprinkler pattern. It works very well. I've had a few demos with it, and it's very, very impressive. It being able to give you a good spray pattern rather than just a straight stream. And one of the things when you learn and as you work with and you start to use F500 extinguishing agent, you're going to see that the spray pattern and the droplet size is going to be very important. The smaller the droplets, the more effective it is at cooling and extinguishing. So one of the things that, you know, we want to make sure, because we, through different trainings, have found and it can become a problem, is limitations and making sure you have the correct equipment when you're sitting there and you're doing it. And when we start talking about it, when you sit there and you're looking at foam proportioners that might be on your apparatus, your foam cells, you know, is it a class A system or is it a class B system? The thing is that you have to also understand is, what's the maximum GPM flow at 1%? What's the maximum flow at 3%? And the reason why you need to know some of these things is because if you can only get 95 gallons per minute at 3% and you are trying to flow 125 gallons per minute, you're not getting 3%. So you need to make certain that you are familiar with your equipment. When you start looking at using an inline eductor, you know, what's the gallonage of the eductor? Is it a 60, a 95, a 125? Because it's important that you match the nozzle to the eductor. If you are using a 95 GPM eductor and a 125 GPM nozzle, you're not going to be working. It's not going to educt. You have to match the two together. The other thing is what's the GPM, or what's the PSI that you need to your eductor? In most cases, you need 200 PSI at the eductor to get it to work. And then you need to watch how much hose you have from the eductor to the nozzle. So, you know, all of these things need to come into play, and we need to be familiar with the equipment so that we don't have issues or we don't have problems when we try to add encapsulator agent. Because if you're fighting a fire that needs 3%, and as I said earlier, if you've got a system that, you know, is going to give you 95 gallons per minute max at 3%, and you're trying to flow a higher percentage and you're not getting 3%, you may not get the results that you're looking for, or that you may see in videos, or that we may tell you. So it's very important that we sit there, we match those up, and everything is working correctly. Now, some of the other things that we want to start to talk about when we deal with these accidents along the highway that we make available is throw and go. We work with Amerisorb, and it's a professional product that helps with the absorption of fuels. It's eco-friendly as well. We're going to show a quick video, but it works hand in hand with F500, and you'll see and you'll hear when I play the video here talking about it, how well it works hand in hand when we sit there and start talking about the spills on the roadways and alongside. So with that, let me get
Hello, my name is Tim Johnson, and I'm the sales manager for a company called Amerisorb out of Olympia, Washington. We are the manufacturer of a Northwest premier product called Throw and Go, which is used as an absorbent to pick up fuel and oil spills in the roadways. Today, I want to demonstrate to you why our product is the product of choice for so many. First, I would like to place some gasoline in the bottom of this lid. You'll be able to see how quickly it wicks the gasoline into itself. Now I'm going to put our product uphill from it. And peat moss has a strong positive charge on a cellular level for hydrocarbons, so it acts like a magnet. And once it's pulled the hydrocarbons and contaminants into the cell, it will not release it again into the environment. As you can see, Throw and Go is rapidly drinking that puddle of gas. It's wicking it uphill, and it's sucking that puddle dry very rapidly. As you can see, in a matter of about 30 seconds, our peat moss brought in all of that gas, wicked it uphill, and sucked that puddle dry. Next, I'm going to show you the fire retardant and vapor suppressant nature of our peat moss. Because of the proprietary drying process that we use, our product acts as a wet blanket over flammable fuels and contaminants. Cover that with a fresh blanket of our peat. I'll put a torch directly on it. As you can see, That throw and go will not allow ignition to take place, even though there's a lot of gas underneath that. Next, I'm going to pull this back and get into some of the wet, gassy peat, and I'm going to light a small fire. And then just a little bit of peat moss sprinkled on immediately snuffs out the flame. A couple of huge safety factors there. Most of our first responders, the biggest risk that they have with a fuel spill is a spark igniting an explosive fire. They love the fact that once they put throw and go down over the fuel, now they don't have to worry about that. It simply cannot happen with our peat moss. Secondly, all of your fuels and oils give off a toxic vapor. Our throw and go holds those vapors down so workers don't have to breathe them while they're working around fuel and oil spills. Next, I'm going to demonstrate how our product works versus the leading kitty litter with used oil. I'm going to put a couple of pancakes of used oil on this pan. I'm going to use a leading kitty litter that is available at all your auto parts stores and still used by many for an oil dry. And on the other side, I'm going to reuse our peat moss that's already brought in fuel. So this is a second usage for throw and go. Now, if you've worked with this type of product, you know you have to sweep it around, push it around, do the kitty litter dance, whatever it takes to get this product to pick up. And because it's not a true absorbent, it's a lot of work and it doesn't work very well. This product is actually classified as an adsorbent, meaning the oils and fuels will only stick to the outside of the particles. They're not being brought into the cell. So wherever this ends up after you pick up a contaminant with it, it's going to recontaminate the environment, called secondary contamination or leaching. The other issue with this type of product, if you read the back of the bag, it warns against silica dust, which is in all of your clay-based kitty litter type products. Silica is carcinogenic, causes cancer. They warn you not to breathe the dust. Again, ours is all organic and natural, will not harm the environment, people, or animals. Now, the best part about our product, it's called throw and go because you can throw this down, go about your business in the work site or at an accident scene, come back 10 or 15 minutes later, it's done the absorbing for you. You don't have to sweep and work it, just shovel it up with a flat shovel. Your surface is going to look like that instead of like that, because this is going to go after the oil on its own. It's going to ball it up like that, leaving the surface clean by comparison to this mess. Well, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. You can learn more about our environmentally friendly line of products by going to our website at amerizorb.com. Have a great day.
Okay, so when we sit there and start looking at, working hand in hand, let's go back and talk about, and we saw the properties and the benefits of using AmeriZorb. The other thing is if you have a large fuel spill at an auto accident where you're trying to do an extrication, you could actually start out by using F500 encapsulator agent to encapsulate the fuel. You could take a reading with your LEL monitor, making sure that the reading is 0. And let's say there's still some gas that's dripping out of the fuel tank. Now you can sit there and you throw down your AmeriZorb, and you can sit there and you can start using that to contain and trap that that leaking fuel yet, so that it's not going to cause an issue with your responders that are extricating and try and get patients out of vehicles. So we can work hand in hand with them. The other thing that is in today's world is basically firefighters' budgets. We're trying to do more and more with less money, less people. The thing is that, there is sources out there that can help with our budgets and trying to do some cost recovery. It's another one of the things that HCT can help with and get you information on here in the US. Excuse me. But it can help you in being able to recover some of those costs that might be associated with your responses to these auto accidents along the highway. And again, we have a real quick video that will explain.
There's been a crash. People are hurt. Fluids are leaking. Traffic needs directing. As you arrive on the scene, your priority is safety.
Jeff, the video don't have sound.
The video's not playing?
Without sound.
Okay, let me try it again.
Fluids are leaking. Traffic needs directing. As you arrive on the scene, your priority is safety,
Is that better?
care, and containment. The last thing on your mind is the cost of the call.
Yes.
But here's a question. Should your department have to pay for someone else's recklessness? If a city ordinance or county resolution says you're entitled to reimbursement, your department has a right to its money. And that's the problem. Do you have the time and the resources to chase it? We do. We're EF Recovery, one of the most experienced providers of billing services. Welcome to Response Recovery, a claims management program that recovers incident response dollars and gives them back to your department. With the Response Recovery program, we have the infrastructure, insurance company relationships, and knowledge of the law to get you the money you deserve. Here's how it works. Using your fire reporting system, we locate and extract the MVA, obtain the incident report, and fill out all the incident paperwork. You approve the claim, we file it, and we pursue collection. If the claim is wrongfully denied, our team of experts pursues the insurance company and makes sure the claim gets paid. Submitting information to us is easy, and the claims review process is fast and convenient. There are no minimums or special requirements, and training is a snap thanks to our templates for manpower, consumables, and equipment that save you time. Best of all, you're in full control of the program. You determine who we speak to, the insurance company, the responsible party who caused the incident, or both. Our customer service is second to none. We use the maximum care, consideration, and professionalism, whether we're working with you, with insurance companies, or with residents in your community. We have safeguards to ensure accuracy and compliance, and we bill for all types of runs. So whatever incident your department responded to, we'll get to work on the reimbursement for it. If you're ready to recover the reimbursable expenses that you've earned, and you want to work with an experienced, seasoned partner, you want this flexible program. The Response Recovery Program from EF Recovery, because your department deserves every dollar it's earned.
And just as, to expound on that is, in many cases, our auto insurance is actually designed or set up to basically pay fire departments a cost if they're using agents or they're using materials to clean up spills and to clean up. These costs are built into everybody's insurance, car insurance, as well as homeowners insurance. So it's something that you're paying for in when you pay your insurance that fire departments aren't utilizing. It would be like, paying for health insurance and then getting sick and paying the bill without using your insurance type of a thing. So, here's a funding stream that's available to the fire service and firefighters to help with their budgets. So by all means, feel free to contact us for additional information on both the throw and go and on EF Recovery. So let's, kind of conclude here and get through and talk about that. And one of the things that I would like to stress is that F500 is not a replacement for foam. There's still a place for foam. By all means, hopefully they do come up with a good quality fluorine-free foam. But we need to understand the difference between an encapsulator agent, water, and foam. your waters, we understand, we use it all the time, really are able to cool using steam. A water droplet somewhere in the area, about maybe 3, if you're lucky, 5% of the water is used to extinguish the fire. The rest is running off. Our foam, if we look at the foam standard NFPA 11 and we go to Annex A11 of the standard, it's going to state that foam's not suitable for 3-dimensional flowing, spraying fuel fires or gas fires. Okay, but what do we use on it? Because up to now, we haven't had anything else, or we didn't think we had anything else. We now have an encapsulator agent that works on those types of fires. So we work on all the types of fires, all the different classes of fires. That foam cannot. Okay, so there is still a place for foam in the fire service. We just want to be another tool in your toolbox. So we hopefully, you'll embrace the new innovative technology that encapsulator agent brings, all the different benefits that we brought to the market as far as the ability to reduce those soot and toxins, reduce the heat, no steam, able to encapsulate fuels, able to extinguish lithium-ion batteries. I mentioned the HF gas as we were going through, and there's also testing that was done on the HF gas. And while we showed you that Clemson report, there's also a report that shows that when we start getting into HF gas and some the testing with lithium-ion batteries, HF gas levels when they use plain water were like 250 to 2,600 parts per million. When they used encapsulator agent into the water stream, the highest amount of HF gas that was released was like 35 or 37 parts per million. So it was greatly reduced as far as being able to reduce our exposure when dealing with lithium-ion battery fires to that HF gas. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, it's been used to neutralize sulfuric acid. And other things. So the benefits that encapsulator agent brings to the fire service is exponentially changes the way we should be fighting fires today. And with that, I guess we can open up for questions. Again, the ability of an encapsulator agent and how we're able to transform the fire service it's changing the way we should be doing things, just as the technology is changing the fires and the types of things that we're experiencing. So in the 21st century, we should be looking at 21st century extinguishing agents. We know that in many instances, some things and tactics that we have been using haven't worked. So it's time that we sit there and we open up and we start looking at what's new in the world to fight 21st century fires. And hopefully I was able to give you some insight in encapsulator agent, how it works, how it can transform fires, how it can make our profession safer, how it can reduce our risk of cancer and exposures to carcinogens and toxins. And with that, again, once you get these presentation that we have tonight, when Hernan shares it to you, if you have some questions that come up, by all means, please email us, share them, info@hct-world.com. We'll make certain that we get those questions answered for you. But again, thank you. It's been my pleasure, and I look forward to our next webinar where we get to meet again and hopefully get some more information out about fires and things that F500 will work on. Thank you, and have a good morning, evening, night, wherever you may be from. I appreciate you.